When the sun comes up on America, across open fields, small towns, and city streets, a new day begins. And here, we rise with it. This is where hard work meets headlines, where truth matters, and America wakes up informed.
An interesting week.
They all are.
This is your country. This is your morning. This is Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. America, let's do it together.
Love you, Ivy.
Love you too.
And it starts right now.
Live from the campus of Hillsdale College in beautiful Hillsdale, Michigan. This is Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve and Ivy on Daybreak on this Tuesday, July 28th of 2026. Good morning, and here are three big things you need to know. One, President Trump back in Washington, D.C. after a speech in the Detroit area yesterday, touting his efforts to bolster the American auto industry and manufacturing. During that campaign-style event at the GM Milford Proving Ground, Trump said he'd done more for auto workers than any other president. He says his tariffs targeting foreign autos have helped to boost domestic production. Two, a destructive tornado ripped through northeast Wisconsin on Monday, the Appleton area. Some really awful images coming from that area. Seems like at least an EF3 twister, if not maybe a low-end EF4. Very high winds, extensive damage, thousands without power. The good news, at least as of late last night, no deaths reported in the Appleton area. Storm system also pummeled parts of Illinois and Indiana with 100-plus mile-per-hour straight-line winds and 2-inch hail. My wife and family driving back that direction yesterday. I'm on the phone watching radar, telling them where to go, when to stop. You don't want to be driving through that stuff. Thankfully, they were okay, too. And as you can see, some of the pictures here, if you're watching along with us, a really destructive storm up in Wisconsin. Again, at least as of late last night, no fatalities there. Three, U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell says he's working hard to get back to his full schedule of work in the Senate and in Kentucky. News released from yesterday morning, McConnell said he's also keeping up with intense physical therapy per his doctor's orders. We'll see if he does make a return before his term expires at the end of the year, essentially. He is not running for re-election. That's where we start hour one of Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Good morning to you. Scott Bertram filling in for Steve and Ivy this morning. Steve covering yesterday's big Donald Trump rally here in Michigan. He'll join us in hour number two with insights and a recap on yesterday's activities, but always pleased and privileged to be filling in. My name, Scott Bertram, where I am, Hillsdale College, where I serve as the general manager of the award-winning WRFH, student-run radio station here at Hillsdale College, also a lecturer in journalism and director of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. You can find me over on X at Scott Bertram, SCOTBERTRAM. Also at scottbertram.com, where I corral all my media doings. You can find me hosting other shows like the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, national radio show, 60-plus radio stations across the country, also other podcasts as well. And love to fill in for Steve when the bat signal goes up. I answer and I fill in. I got to start. I wake up and I kind of get a feel. What's motivating me? What's driving me? And I keep coming back, and I'm sure Steve talked about this yesterday. I keep coming back to these new revelations about Anthony Fauci. And I in some ways hate doing this. I feel like it's 2020 all over again. But Rand Paul did the nation a great service over the weekend by releasing these diary entries from Dr. Anthony Fauci to show us what he really knew, when he knew it, to show us what his real motivations were. And it is, frankly, pretty disgusting. And the more you think about it, one of the bad things here is that there's nothing we can do about it. Now, I don't even want to start going down the road of this is criminal, this is criminal. You got a pardon. You got a pardon from President Biden. So what are you going to do about it? Complain? Try to move and act so it never happens again? Yeah, all those things. But this should be infuriating. You think back to 2020, 2021, Anthony Fauci, Dr. Fauci, I am science, that guy, telling you couldn't have relatives at funerals, couldn't say goodbye to your dad, couldn't gather, unless, of course, you were protesting. Then the virus didn't spread. We all recall that, of course. We know now in January 2020, Dr. Fauci said the market was not the source, it was the amplifier. And Jim Garrity over at National Review has done work on this for essentially 6 years now, on the source of the COVID outbreak. And he looked and looked and looked. He could not find a specific instance in which Dr. Fauci said the market was the source. But he certainly led us to believe that was the case because he shot down time and time again the possibility it was a leak. It was a lab leak. Shut it down again and again. And of course, famously or infamously for Jon Stewart, you have his famous or infamous Stop at Stephen Colbert show, where he says, where could this have come from? Maybe the place where they were testing it, maybe from the lab. The great chocolate leak in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Where did it come from? Maybe the Hershey factory. But now we know Anthony Fauci was talking with left-wing media members, coordinating media coverage. He was shocked by how much the media loved him, basking in the positive media coverage. This diary reads like it's by a high school girl. This is a quote. The situation with my national and international fame is explosive and really unimaginable. It is not hyperbole to say I am the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable people in the world. That's Dr. Fauci talking to himself in his diary. And all the time now, we know that he was making pronouncements. We already knew earlier. Right, we just made up the 6 foot thing. Stay 3 feet? I forget at this point. 6 feet from each other? Just made the number up. We now know he was making pronouncements on all sorts of things he either knew were untrue or knew little about, and was using his position to influence the country based on nothing rooted in science whatsoever, presenting himself as a nonpartisan when he clearly was not, when he clearly was coordinating behind the scenes with left-wing media members about how to make his interviews go better and how to conspire against members of Donald Trump's team and trying to get various people fired. It's all pretty disgusting. And in the end, what he harmed all of us, quite frankly. But what he also harmed, and what is going to take years, decades, an awfully long time to repair, if it can be repaired, is the country's faith in science and those who profess to be speaking on behalf of science. Dr. Fauci made sure there was no difference in the minds of many Americans. What he said was gospel, what he said was law, and what he said was science, and he was merely following the science on all of these pronouncements about COVID-19. And look, many of us figured this out a long time ago, but we now have the diary entries and the writings from Dr. Fauci saying and admitting that that is simply not true. It should infuriate you. There's not much we can do about it, I don't think, at this point, except to stain the legacy of Dr. Fauci. Throw those pillows away, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. More next on Daybreak. It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertrand sitting in this morning for Steve and Ivy. You get one for the price of two, as I like to say. They'll be back with you tomorrow and through the rest of the week. Steve covering yesterday's President Trump rally in Michigan. We'll talk to him in hour two and also hear from President Trump at the top of hour two from that stop yesterday at the General Motors testing facility. Over the weekend, and I imagine Steve might have played this for you yesterday, but it's so good. I was going to say it was bad. It is bad. It's good to play because it shines a spotlight and makes transparent the beliefs of the Democratic Socialists of America, who believe they are ascendant. There's some unearned confidence, I think, on behalf of DSA members at this point because they've been winning these deep blue primaries and putting people in office in some very deep blue areas. And they think they're ascendant, and they think that their beliefs are popular, and they think that if they say what they really believe, that they'll actually be improving their stock. And I just don't think that's the case. DSA co-chair Megan Romer was on Fox News Sunday and confirming, and did it in such a neat and orderly way that you can bet that this clip will appear, portions of this clip will appear in campaign ads from now until November for virtually every Republican running in a competitive race across the country, confirming that the DSA platform contains and includes some incredibly crazy stuff that essentially includes destroying and dismantling what makes America not just great, but what makes America a country. DSA co-chair Megan Romer on Sunday on Fox News Sunday. Listen to what they actually believe. Cut one.
We're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform, and I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate.
True.
Okay. Replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them.
Yep.
Abolish ICE.
Absolutely.
Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally.
As a long-term plan, yep.
Defund the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Abolish prisons, at least in large part.
Yeah, again, that is part of a long-term program, yeah.
Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could not possibly do a better job of corralling all the crazy stuff in one place and having someone provide virtually no pushback whatsoever and agree that those are the things they want to do. Abolish the U.S. Senate, replace the president and the Supreme Court. Again, dismantling the country as we know it. Abolishing ICE seems quaint in this perspective, from this perspective, but they want to do that too. No borders, amnesty for all, defunding the Pentagon, no defense, abolishing prisons completely, and seizing the means of production. Not just socialists, but yes, communists. So Megan Romer says all this stuff. This is what we want. This is what we're working towards. Democratic Socialists of America. And there are Democratic Socialists of America who are now in Congress. And if the media were honest and trustworthy, which of course they are not, people will be roaming the halls of Congress asking every Democrat to agree or disagree with that nice 8-point plan the DSA has, or be asked to attempt to push that part out of the party. And that's not going to happen, of course. But there are a few questions being asked. Michigan Democrat Debbie Dingell was on CNN and asked about the Democratic Socialists of America and these crazy things they believe and wish to implement if they do achieve some sort of power. Debbie Dingell tries to have it both ways, of course, without expressly condemning the Democratic Socialists of America. This is cut 4 from CNN.
Do you think these goals pull from the focus that you are trying to put out there, your message on affordability?
So I'm going to say this to you point blank. I hate labels. I don't happen to agree with a lot of what was just said, but I also don't think that a lot of my Democratic colleagues that I work with agree with those at all either.
Debbie Dingell, I don't agree with a lot of what was just said, and she was just played that clip from Megan Romer. So the follow-up naturally would be, what exactly do you agree with? My guess is she would say the abolish ICE portion. I guess everything else is completely insane. But she won't condemn it because those voters are providing whatever energy there might be in the Democratic Party right now. As you might know, it's pretty unpopular right now, the Democratic Party is, even against a president that is not exactly busting the 50% approval rating right now. Democrats can't find people to like them either. So Debbie Dingell can't say, I don't like Democratic Socialists. I don't want them in my party. I don't agree with what they say. She can say, I don't agree with everything. Seizing the means of production might be a step too far, but, they bring some nice arguments to the table. Abdul El-Sayed, who's running for U.S. Senate here in Michigan, where I sit right now, in a primary fight against Haley Stevens, El-Sayed's been very careful not to call himself a democratic socialist, which Debbie Dingell would like because she doesn't like labels, she just told us. Although his support comes almost exclusively from the democratic socialist wing of the Democratic Party, from Bernie Sanders, from AOC, and from others. He was in a debate last night with Haley Stevens. This is very quick. It's the end of an answer, but asked about, again, basically the Megan Romer laundry list of things Democratic Socialists wish to achieve. Abdul El-Sayed here, very quick. This is cut number 7.
When it comes to the question of socialism, I'm not a socialist. I'm just a capitalist who understands how capitalism works.
Okay, I'm not a socialist. I'm just a capitalist who understands how the system works. Great follow-up. Not asked. What makes you a capitalist? I would love to hear Abdul El-Sayed answer that question. And if you're saying, this is like Christine O'Donnell, the Delaware Senate candidate from years ago. If you have to say I'm not a witch, you're probably in deep. If you have to say I'm not a socialist, that's because most people see you, hear you, believe you, and think you to be a socialist. More next. Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott. It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertram filling in on this Tuesday morning all across this great country. Thanks so much for being alongside. We'll talk with Brylan Hollihan coming up in just a few minutes. His new book is Make America Talk Again, How to Save Humanity from a Screaming Culture. This portion of the program brought to you by Ghost Bed. We are smack dab in the middle of summer, and maybe you're uncomfortable, and maybe you're not sleeping well. Do you want to continue that through the rest of July and into August? Barely sleeping because you're too hot all night long? People blame the heat for bad sleep, but it could be the mattress trapping that heat. And if you already sleep hot, summer just makes it worse. That's why Ghost Bed is out there. It helps keep you cool all night long. No waking up sweaty and tossing and turning and throwing the covers around at 2 a.m. Cooling technology is built into every mattress. It's not an add-on or an option you pay extra for. Hot sleepers are some of Ghost Bed's happiest customers, and you get incredible support, less stiffness, deeper sleep, and more rested mornings. GhostBed gives you 101 nights to try it at home. That's basically the rest of summer. Give it a chance. Sleep on it. Feel the difference for yourself. GhostBed currently having a sale. That's always a good chance to take advantage of things. An extra 10% off for the Daybreak audience. With financing GhostBed, some of them average out to $1 a day. Go to ghostbed.com/Gruber. Use the promo code Gruber. That's ghostbed.com/Gruber. Promo code Gruber. You got a couple in suburban Chicago, a 72-year-old retired financial planner and a 69-year-old retired special education teacher pleading guilty to charges that they defaced a suburban Chicago Republican headquarters. They got 18 months court supervision, 100 hours of community service, and a $100 fine. It's all caught on video, not difficult to prosecute, which is why you might have gotten a guilty plea. They were drawing swastikas and profanities, tossing feces and an unknown liquid at the headquarters, GOP headquarters in Arlington Heights, Illinois. What motivates a 72-year-old retired financial planner and a 69-year-old retired special education teacher to do such a thing? Scott Bertram in here on Daybreak.
Today, one
It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Thanks so much for being alongside on this Tuesday morning. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve and Ivy. They're back with you tomorrow. We'll talk with Steve at hour 2. He was covering President's rally yesterday in Michigan. Opportunity now. One of the good things about this fill-in opportunity with Steve that I have is to talk to up and comers, and I wouldn't call Brylan Hollyhand an up and comer. He's done just fine for himself already, but it is my first opportunity to talk to him, and he's got a brand new book out, "Make America Talk Again: How to Save Humanity from a Screaming Culture." It's released and available now. You can find him on X at Brylan Hollyhand and BrylanHollyhand.com. Brylan, thanks so much for joining us here on Daybreak.
Scott, good morning to you. Happy Tuesday, and I'm excited to be up with you. This is exciting.
Book's been out for a couple of weeks. Told me before we started it's going real well. #1 on day one. So this has been a kind of a whirlwind for you as the book is released. People can find you all over the place as well. And the subject is one that's important because it's what we're doing now. Make America talk again. Conversations, debates, even disagreements. Silence is not safe is a point you make early. And we're seeing a bit of this with Sophie Cunningham, I think, at the WNBA. It would be very easy for her not to say anything at all and think, I'm protected. I believe this, but I don't want to say things. Why is silence perhaps this facade of safeness?
Well, I think we've traded comfort we traded courage for comfort in our generation. We've decided that we're just going to kind of roll over, tuck our tail, because that's the easy way out. And we certainly have seen the result of that. We've seen our freedoms been encroached upon, and we've seen those be stripped away. I share a story in the book about this kind of pivotal moment in my career a few months ago. It was the week after Charlie's funeral, and I'm starting to go back to my class. And we're kind of figuring out what life looks like now. We've got obviously a security team that's walking you to your classes every day. And it's like this weird world that kind of seems flipped upside down from what I was used to. And I sit down with my team and we decide that we're going to do 10 debates. And we're going to try to keep the legacy going of getting debate out there and truth out there. And we're trying to look at which debates could be safe and which campuses we need to avoid, and et cetera. And my brand new security team, who I barely know at this point, walks in the room and plops down a binder in front of me that's thick. And I'm like, oh, like, this is my homework, right? Like, sorry that I missed this homework when I was out, but like, we'll get on this. And they were like, no, like, you're naive and gullible. This is the death threat you've gotten in the last 12 hours. And Scott, I remember stepping outside of the room and just praying. And I was like, God, like, take this all away. Like, it would be so much easier and so much safer in my mind to step away from politics, to hang up my hat, to let somebody else fight this fight. I don't need to do this. I can go back and do homework. I can go to the tailgates with my buddies and have a lot more fun. Somebody can go out and risk themselves to do this. And the Isaiah 6:8 verse came to mind, the "Here I am, send me," because it's so important when God says, "Whom shall I send?" Isaiah didn't say, "Send me if it's easy," or "Send me if it's safe or comfortable." He just said, "Send me," and that's what we're called to do. And sometimes it might not be the most comfortable thing, but silence is not safety.
You mentioned you were trying to set up these 10 debates in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death. And one of the points late in Make America Talk Again is how to become the kind of person that people can talk to. And even people who disagreed with Charlie Kirk apparently felt comfortable coming to rallies and coming to events and having the conversations and trying to debate. What is that kind of person that Charlie was and that you try to be that makes people want to talk with you?
Well, it starts pretty simple. You can never hate me more than I love this country. So you can throw whatever you'd like at me. You can say whatever you'd like at me. I'm still gonna, stay calm and level-headed. At least try my best to, and respond to you with truth and love. Because I think that's what people miss about this. If we didn't love the other side, if we didn't love our neighbor, as Scripture commands us to, we wouldn't do this. We wouldn't go out and debate for fun. It's certainly not anything that's thrilling or just like a bucket list item to get screamed at and thrown things at and literally risk your life to sit out there. We do it because we love the people that are screaming at us because we want them to know the truth. And I think that's kind of a misconception on their side. Charlie would still be alive today if he sat in the comfort of a podcast studio and talked about the world's problems into an echo chamber, like a lot of people on the right do. He knew the risk. He went outside and debated and chose to, take the path of truth. A specific strategy. I asked him one time, we were both hanging out before one of his debates, and I was like, how do you do it? Like, how do you stay calm in these moments where people are like literally screaming at you? And he was like, find a point of human connection with everybody. So the example that I share in the book that I do, if somebody comes up and you can tell they're extra aggressive, I try to humanize them before anything. And hey man, what's your name? Where are you from? fun fact about you, something, and then I'll be like, oh, I love that T-shirt. Like that's a cool band, or oh, that's like a really cool sports team. Something that they look at me as just a fellow, human, a fellow American.
Hmm.
It's a lot harder to scream at me, assassinate me, throw things at me if I'm just a fellow human.
Brylan Hollyhand is with us. His new book, Make America Talk Again: How to Save Humanity from a Screaming Culture. You recommend being a bold conservative without being a bitter one. Is that what perhaps people more of my generation might call being a happy warrior?
It's exactly that. And that's one of my favorite parts of the book was I think it's really important as we go into the midterms. Let's talk about this. So, for example, after 9/11, several years ago, we had this moment of September 12th that everybody talks about where American flags were put out, where there was kind of this national unity in the wake of a tragedy. Well, coincidental enough, Charlie's assassination happened to be that same week in 2025 on September 10th. And it was the worst day I can possibly imagine, something I never ever want to relive. But September 11th of that year seemed to be a moment where the country came together. We had some national unity where everybody was like, this is horrible that this young man was killed for speaking truth. Like both sides kind of was able to come together and say, yeah, we do need to stop this. This got too far. And if you told me at that point that we'd be looking at a midterm election where Republicans didn't have the best odds, I would have been like, you're crazy. Like all of us are so together and we all are banded together and nothing else matters right now other than defeating the enemy that's literally starting the rhetoric that killed my friend. And here we sit, a few weeks out from the midterms where Republicans are very divided because we've been bitter, because we took a tragedy and we took our anger from it and we took it out on each other, because we decided that we were going to go down the path of conspiracy theories, or we were going to elevate voices that say the most extreme things possible for clicks and likes and engagement, and all in the name of having this big tent, but our big tent has collapsed on itself because we've let in some extreme, crazy people. So the point of this is to say that you can say bold things without being bitter. And I think Republicans need to understand, especially newer Republicans coming into the party, that we will welcome you. Absolutely. We want independent free thinkers. We do not want monotone people that just, fall in line and say the same thing, that, read a script. Say your truth and all of that, but definitely don't come in here thinking that you just need to say something crazy, radical, extreme to get a good, engagement on Twitter, because that's not going to work.
Brylan Hollyhand with us. We got about 60 seconds left. I worry that the screaming is so loud and the division is so bitter that people are checking out and not paying attention anymore. You address this late in the book, the illusion that people don't care. If people aren't talking, does that necessarily mean they don't care about what's happening around them?
I think a lot of people have said, oh, look at politics. It's too taboo. It's too dirty. I'm not going to get involved. And specifically Christians, the number one group of people that didn't vote in the 2024 election, said, it's a messy game. I'm not going to touch it. When you do
Hmm.
that, you leave the room for non-Christians to choose your next leaders and non-Christians to get into office. And so the message there in the book is, regardless of how loud it is, regardless of how dirty it is, it's your job, literally commanded in Scripture, to be the one that goes and cleans it up and shares literally the salt and light of the earth there. And that's all of our calling.
Brylan Hollyhand, the new book is Make America Talk Again. Available now. You can find him at BrylanHollyhand.com and at Brylan Hollyhand over on X. You're doing great. Good to talk to you for the first time, Brylan, and hope to do it again soon. Congratulations on the book. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Scott. Have a great week. Definitely not the last time. We'll do it again soon.
Excellent. Thank you. Scott Bertram sitting in here on Daybreak. It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertram sitting in on this Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining us. The current Attorney General of South Carolina joins us now. It's Alan Wilson. He's also the nominee. He's running for governor in South Carolina as well. Wilson4SC.com. You can find him on X at AG Alan Wilson as well. Alan, thanks so much for joining us here on Daybreak.
It's great to be with you. Thank you for having me on.
We appreciate it. Everyone pointing toward November, the president looking toward November as well. One of the reasons he was up here in Michigan yesterday with a rally, that's not a campaign spot, but certainly a rally at General Motors talking about the economy and manufacturing and the American automotive industry. You're running for governor, so you're talking to voters too. You're hearing about kitchen table issues all the time, prices and inflation, and what the economy looks like right now. When you consider what's been accomplished, the working family tax cuts, how would you describe to a potential voter what Donald Trump and what Republicans have done for Americans' pocketbooks over the past few years?
Well, when I was running for governor for the Republican nomination this past year, the number one issue that I heard about from almost every single person that I talked to was about affordability in this state and this country. In fact, yesterday, speaking of affordability, I was at the reopening of a aluminum smeltering plant, Century Aluminum in Goose Creek, South Carolina, which produces about 30% of all the aluminum in the United States. They were 2 weeks away from shutting down when the Trump administration came in and implemented policies that allowed them to continue to operate. And so this is an expansion of making America great again and putting America first. And if it wasn't for the Trump administration inserting itself, this plant would have gone away forever. And there are 650 jobs there, and it's going to only grow. And so that is something I'm incredibly proud of.
Alan, when you look at the current state of the electorate as we head toward November, there's a lot of discussion about the SAVE Act and voter ID and protecting our elections. Is there a sense, do you have the sense that Republican voters need to see Washington move on this as a boost toward Election Day, not just from a political perspective, but from a meat and potatoes perspective, that you're acting, not you specifically, but Republicans are acting on a very important aspect of what voters are looking for?
I've been Attorney General for over 15 years now, and election integrity has always been an issue that concerns voters, at least voters that I'm talking to. I was the first Attorney General in the country to successfully defend South Carolina's voter ID law. I defended a number of other safeguard measures that we've implemented here in the state, and the SAVE Act is a federal measure that prohibits and basically provides additional tools that prevent illegal aliens from voting. When people believe that the election system is compromised and their vote is being diluted by illegal votes, they're disincentivized from engaging in the election process. The most American thing we can do is ensure that our elections maintain their integrity and that every vote counts and they're not diluted by those votes cast by people who are here illegally.
Alan Wilson with us, the current Attorney General of South Carolina, also Republican nominee for governor in South Carolina, Wilson4SC.com. We know in Michigan, illegal votes were cast in this past presidential election. We saw this past week in New Jersey, 6,000 plus names that should not have been on the voter rolls illegally were there. And some votes were cast there as well. And Democrats tend to sort of wave their hands and just say, it's not that many, don't worry about it. And as you point out, any one of those votes cancels out the valid vote of a U.S. citizen. And there are not onerous protections that can be put in place to stop it from happening. Why aren't some Republicans more vociferous about fighting for the voter integrity and the integrity of every vote by a U.S. citizen?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know why we're dragging our feet on this. Obviously, this is something that I joined a coalition of 22 attorneys general 2 summers ago in support of this act. We joined a letter promoting this back in the summer of 2024. Here we are in the summer of 2026 with the midterm election staring us down the face right now in a few short months. So, I mean, I don't know why it's so hard. I don't know why, people can't get their head wrapped around the idea that in every other country in the free world, at least, they have stricter measures on protecting and safeguarding their elections. They have stricter measures on protecting their own borders. I mean, but in America, if you try to protect your borders and you try to ensure the integrity of the election system, you get yelled at and and people drag their feet on it. I don't understand why this is a big deal. I don't understand why we can't just come together and the Republicans, while we have the majority, ensure that our future elections are secured.
Alan Wilson with us, current Attorney General, running for governor in South Carolina as well. I'm curious to your experiences. You said more than a decade, I believe, as Attorney General in South Carolina. What have you learned during your time in that position, which is, people I think underestimate the importance sometime of the attorneys general in states across the country. What does that give you as you look toward becoming South Carolina's next governor? What experience will you bring to the governor's mansion?
Well, I think the benefit I've had by serving as Attorney General is it's allowed me to connect with the people of South Carolina from every corner of South Carolina. I've been defending, whether it's our election integrity laws, I've been defending our immigration laws, I've been fighting against illegal drug trafficking and smuggling, human trafficking, child predatory behavior. We've gone after child predators. It's allowed me to really tap into the issues that are most important to South Carolina residents, and it's really given me a sense of where our citizenry wants to see South Carolina go as we move into the future. So I've enjoyed fighting for the people of South Carolina as their Attorney General for nearly 16 years. I look forward to fighting as their next governor over the next 8 years.
You optimistic about your race, and are you optimistic about the chances for Republicans to maintain control of both the Senate and the House nationally?
Look, I really am optimistic. I mean, in South Carolina especially, I'm very optimistic. I'm not taking it for granted. I'm not phoning it in. I'm going to run through the tape in November. At the national level, I think, sometimes, there's a historical trend that the party in power loses in the midterm elections. But when you see the craziness coming out of some of these areas of the country, like Mondami up in New York and others, the squad, you see the crazy things that they're saying and doing, and they're seeing that growing base in the Democratic Party take hold. It gives me hope that we have a chance at holding the majority in the midterms in a few months.
Alan Wilson, current Attorney General of South Carolina, also Republican nominee for governor. Find him online, wilson4sc.com, and at AG Alan Wilson on X. Alan, thanks so much for joining us here on Daybreak.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertrand filling in for Steve and Ivy today. They're back with you tomorrow. This portion of the program brought to you by The Wellness Company. This summer, patriotic Americans from coast to coast celebrated the 250th birthday of the greatest country on the planet. That would be this one, the United States of America, the nation founded by brave patriots who declared their independence from our British overlords. It's not just a good time to reflect on 250 years of American exceptionalism, but a great time to channel some of that individualism and declare your independence from big pharma and the broken medical establishment. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. You see and hear the Wellness Company doctors all the time with Steve and Ivy. You know, their products are the gold standard, keeping you and your family safe and healthy. The Wellness Company gives you the opportunity to make sure you're prepared for whatever happens with their series of prescription medical kits. Kits that contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of the medications. Additionally, the Wellness Company offers a variety of products from parasite cleanses, weight loss, so much more. Can help you stay healthy and live a longer and more satisfying life. Celebrate America's 250th by declaring your independence from Big Pharma. Go to twc.health/Gruber today and order. That's twc.health/Gruber. Use the promo code Gruber and you'll save 10% at The Wellness Company, twc.health/Gruber. You may remember from, how long ago was it? Late last year? The big Cracker Barrel controversy, the logo change, repainting, reorganizing the restaurants. It seemed that nobody liked it, and it was reversed almost immediately after being announced. Well, the Cracker Barrel CEO is stepping down. Her name, Julie Massino. She'll step down next month, remain with the company till October 9th. Faced a fierce backlash against the company by customers after making those changes. Things reverted back to the way they were, and actually numbers improved for Cracker Barrel after that. That was last August. That was almost a year ago, the big Cracker Barrel controversy. Goodness gracious. She's out. She's got some sort of golden parachute. She'll get $1 million payment, so she'll be okay. Hour 2 next on Daybreak.
I'm Shanola.
Let me know if I got to move.
America's awake, and we're just getting started. The headlines that matter, the stories they won't tell you, and the voices fighting to be heard. This is your country, your morning, your daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. A new hour starts right now on Real America's Voice.
Live from the campus of beautiful Hillsdale College here in Hillsdale, Michigan, I'm Scott Bertram, sitting in for Steve and Ivy this morning here on Daybreak this Tuesday, July 28th of 2026, and here are three big things you need to know. 1, President Trump is expressing some optimism about diplomatic efforts in the Iran war. Trump said yesterday he has patience and time for reaching a deal. He also told reporters if the U.S. and Iran can't make a deal, we'll go back to doing what we were doing. U.S. diplomats sought to give some peace talks some space on Friday, bringing a halt to 2 weeks of military strikes. 2, as I mentioned, the CEO of Cracker Barrel is stepping down. Julie Masino will resign from the role next month, but remain with the company in an advisory capacity for a couple of months. News comes after she was in the middle of a controversy last year about the restaurant's rebrand. That decision was quickly reversed after public backlash. And 3, YouTube Premium subscribers soon will have access to shows like The Office and Law & Order, SVU, and live sporting events too. NBC Universal's Peacock streaming service will be teaming up with YouTube in 2027 to create a new bundle. Just what we need, a new bundle. The service will be an add-on to existing YouTube Premium services. Price not yet announced, but Peacock essentially subsumed into the YouTube universe. You can get it through YouTube Premium. We'll see if there's more coordination between streaming services, and that matters since YouTube is the big gorilla in the streaming wars. All right, that's where we start hour 2 of Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday morning. We will talk with the aforementioned Steve Gruber coming up this hour. He was in Michigan covering the president's stop rally yesterday at General Motors. We'll hear from the president here in a second. J.D. Hayworth also coming up later on this hour as well. And we'll talk with Katie Hyde next hour, Jay Ford as well. Full program. We'll hear from the socialists again, the DSA co-chair, confirming everything that you think. They want to abolish the Senate. They want to replace the president and the Supreme Court as we know it. Abolish ICE, defund the Pentagon, abolish prisons, no borders, amnesty for all, seize the means of production. These are the things they actually believe. Democrats should spend the next few months defending all of those positions if they wish to maintain wish to maintain the Democrat Socialists of America inside their circle of support. President Trump yesterday in Michigan. Let's set the table a bit for our conversation with Steve Gruber later on this hour and hear from President Trump yesterday in Michigan at General Motors, the testing facility, talking about manufacturing, talking about the auto industry and what he and his administration have done to help in that matter. This is President Trump yesterday on his administration protecting the American auto industry. Cut 3.
But for decades, the auto workers and manufacturers of this great state were sold out and betrayed by globalist politicians and corrupt special interests who let other countries steal your jobs, pillage your factories, and loot the crown jewels of American industry from Detroit and all over our country. They were ripping us off, not only in the auto business, but in many other businesses. Every president before me promised to stop it, but none of them did anything. They did nothing. But now, at long last, Michigan finally has a president who stands up for Michigan auto workers and puts America first.
It's true. I don't think he talked about this yesterday, but the freedom, the ability that President Trump and the Trump administration gave to American automakers too, and this will seem basic, but the ability for automakers to make cars people want to buy makes a big difference. Under the Biden administration, there was so much pressure to move toward electric vehicles, to move off the internal combustion engine. General Motors said no more gas powered cars by 2030, whatever the year was. And we're getting rid of all this. And that was not what people wanted. If they wanted something like that, they flocked to the Toyota hybrids. They liked that. They did not want to go full electric vehicle. And yet, due to government, um, well, suggestion, is that the word we want to use? The big three automakers were moving toward EVs and toward producing more vehicles and more cars and more trucks that Americans simply didn't want to buy. And so all the things the president said is true, but the environment that the administration has created to allow automakers to make cars and trucks and vehicles that people actually want to buy can't be understated. That's a big factor in this as well. That'll trump on the broader issue of American manufacturing yesterday in Michigan. Cut 5.
For decades, we were told that it was totally impossible to bring back American manufacturing. Obama would say it. Remember Barack Hussein Obama? Obama. He was so bad for the auto industry. I don't know, Honestly, I don't know how you vote for Democrats because they are so bad for the industry. But it turned out that all you really needed to get him back was a new president, somebody that understood business, understood what it was all about. I've been complaining about it for many years.
Indeed, and he did something about it as he became president for the second time. And again, creating an environment where people feel that it's safe to do what's best, what's in the best interest of the company and American consumers without fear of punishment from Washington is a big deal too. The president also yesterday hitting on big cities, crime in big cities across the country, and what he, and again, his administration have done in Washington, D.C. There was so much blowback to the president getting involved in cutting down on crime in D.C., and the results have been astonishing. And not just cutting down on crime, but repairing the fountains. I heard from people who lived in D.C. for a decade and didn't know that that thing over there was an actual fountain. And all of a sudden there's water flowing. Like, that's beautiful. Beautifying the city, cleaning up the crime. Donald J. Trump, President Trump, taking a bit of a victory lap about that yesterday. This is cut number 6.
But you know what we did the best? We stopped crime in Washington. It's down 88%. And we moved out over 5,000 career animals. We moved them out, and it's really considered a very safe city. All the restaurants were closing up. Nobody wanted to operate a restaurant. We have a great restaurant here. Where are you from? Michigan. Where's my restaurateur? He was one of the great. Where's Mark? Mark, you're right in front. How'd you get such a good seat? He's a great restaurateur, but everything you have is clean. But it's true, and I'm just saying, they take over. Everything becomes disgusting and dirty. It's dirty and filthy and grimy. It's not clean anymore.
Make America clean again. Maybe we can run on that note. Make America clean again. We'll hear from Steve Gruber coming up in about 20 minutes or so. He was there yesterday with the president in Michigan. We'll hear what he saw on the ground and what he heard from people who attended. That's coming up in just a bit. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve and Ivy this morning on Daybreak. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back. Daybreak with Scott Bertram this morning, filling in for Steve and Ivy. They'll be back tomorrow. Steve actually joins us in about 15 minutes or so, talking about the president's rally yesterday, an appearance at the General Motors plant. And you can find me, by the way, on X at Scott Bertram, SCOTBERTRAM, or over at scottbertram.com, where I corral all my media doings. Today's interview here is a must for anyone who feels like their skin complexion is dull and due for a refresh. The aging process, which I'm getting used to, can lead to photo damage and hyperpigmentation, premature aging. It can leave your skin looking a lot less like you. Today's guest, no stranger to the show, a trichologist who knows the best products, not just for hair and scalp, but also for skin. She was here previously raving about the best shampoo to lift, plump, and add volume to your hair. Back today to talk about how you can get a gorgeous, radiant, glowing skin. Laura Volpe is back with us, nationally recognized trichologist, leader in the hair loss and beauty industry, empowering women to elevate their beauty, skin, hair, confidence through science-backed, results-driven products and strategies. Laura, welcome back to Daybreak.
Thank you so much for having me back again. I'm so excited.
Wonderful to see you again. What do you have to share with us today?
Yeah, so I have found the best skincare from Purance. As you know, you have may seen me here raving about their Hydra Lift shampoo, like you just mentioned. So it's only natural that I tried their organic skincare line as well. It's been featured in major publications like Elle Magazine and LA Weekly, just to name a few. And to date, they've helped over 60,000 women fall in love with their skin and their complexion again. So it's really no surprise because Purance always delivers clean, organic ingredients without harsh preservatives in their products, whether it's hair care, and now I'm seeing it in their skincare as well.
Mm-hmm. Women rightfully concerned about what they're putting on their skin, on their face, not fans of synthetic chemicals or harsh preservatives in skincare, and again, with good reason. So gentle, organic skincare sounds like a real breath of fresh air for many of them. What else can you tell us about the products?
Oh my gosh, where do I even start? Purance has an entire skincare line, but today I want to walk you through 4 products that I personally love the most. And what I love so much is not only the efficacy of them and the results that I'm getting, but they actually work as a system together. So let me walk you through how I layer them. You're going to start with the Even Glow Serum, and that is your dark spot corrector. It's powered by Kakadu Plum, which has 100 times more concentrated vitamin C than oranges. So you're going to apply that onto clean, dry skin first. Then next, you're going to use the Cellular Restore Serum. Think of that as your retinol, but without the redness, the dryness, the irritation. The active ingredients that makes this work so incredibly well is bakuchiol oil, a plant-based alternative that gives you all of the anti-aging benefits. And 92.9% of women say they saw fewer wrinkles in just 3 weeks. Then last, you're going to layer in the Cellular Hydration Serum, and think of this as your deep moisturizer. It contains tremella mushroom, which is actually it's better than hyaluronic acid. So it's going to seal everything in. And for your eyes, you're going to use the Lift and Glow Eye Cream, and that goes last right around the eyes to brighten those dark circles and restore radiance and plumpness where we need it the most. So 4 products, 1 simple routine. This is great for women who are aging, going through menopause, like so many of my clients here in my hair loss clinic. This line addresses everything that is changing in the skin at once.
That's going to sound appealing for many of our listeners and viewers today on the program. And I also understand there's a special offer available today. Is that right?
Oh my gosh, yes. Your viewers can save 35% on all Purance products. So just head over to Purance.com, enter code DAYBREAK at checkout. Every single purchase is backed by their 365-day money-back guarantee. So there's truly nothing to lose. I want every woman watching this to feel as confident in her skin as she deserves to.
Laura, thank you so much for coming back here on Daybreak. It's always a great pleasure having you here. And if our listeners and viewers want to try Purance skincare, head to Purance.com, enter the coupon code DAYBREAK at checkout. That's PUREANCE.com. Coupon code DAYBREAK to save 35% on your order today. Laura, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us here on Daybreak.
Same. Okay. Bye.
I appreciate it. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve and Ivy here on Daybreak. We'll talk with Steve coming up in around 10 minutes or so about the president's visit yesterday to Michigan. I host this other show, podcast called Political Beats. Hopefully you've checked it out. It's a show about music where we talk with people in the world of politics about their favorite band or musical artist. And we sometimes do these special themed shows. We did one a bit ago on the greatest songs about boating and sailing because there was something trending on Twitter, on X a while ago, with these videos of people like crossing the Atlantic and the waves and the waves crashing and just the fury of the ocean and the open water. And you wonder why so many great songs have been written about sailing and boating. It's because it was crazy. This guy, a sailor from California, is now recovering after having spent a month drifting at sea. A guy named Kai Sato left Catalina Island June 7th for his first solo row to Hawaii. 2 weeks in, his mast broke. The phone he was using for navigation stopped working. He then tried to go back to California under motor power, but the boat ran out of fuel, which seems like something you would not want to have happen if you're in the middle of the ocean. Sato says he was taken south by the current, kept drifting off course, tried to improvise repairs, and running out of drinking water as well. Survived on condensation, oatmeal, and fish and squid. The crew aboard a cargo ship found him on July 21st, about 900 miles from Hawaii, brought him aboard. Crew gave him food, water, clothing, and a room, and brought him back to land. And hopefully didn't charge him because that experience was tough enough. Nearly a month drifting at sea. Everything seems to be okay now. Don't know if he'll try that again. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve. This is Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Thanks for joining us. It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Thanks so much for joining us. Scott Bertram sitting in on this Tuesday morning. Going to give you a couple of under-the-radar things to keep an eye on as we move toward November. I was in Wisconsin last week for a couple of days. Went to a Brewers game at American Family Field. My first time in that facility. Pretty nice. That gubernatorial race there is crazy. On the Democratic side, you have a flat-out, fully admitted socialist, Francesca Hong. She's leading in the polling right now. And as you might be aware, Wisconsin is somewhat famous for electing socialists. Alice Cooper told us all about this in Wayne's World, if you recall, telling Wayne and Garth that Milwaukee, the only major city in the U.S. to elect 2 socialist mayors. So Francesca Hong is leading, and this has freaked out Democrats in Wisconsin so badly, they had one candidate drop out because she was misreporting, accidentally, she says, misreporting her campaign donations and then what she spent. And so she's out, and they re-recruited a candidate who had dropped out 3 weeks ago to get back in the race. And so now he's the great hope to head off Francesca Hong at the pass and prevent a socialist from becoming the Democratic nominee for governor in Wisconsin. I don't know if that's going to be successful. Tom Tiffany is the Republican running for governor. in the state of Wisconsin. The field's been cleared for him. And so that could be an interesting pickup opportunity among the governor's mansions across the country. Watch that and keep an eye and an ear on Francesco Hong for more socialism in Wisconsin. The other thing to watch is what happens with John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania. Fetterman, yesterday in a story, says Democrats were horribly wrong to try eliminating the Senate filibuster. There's another story yesterday out where John Fetterman says, hey, if Democrats don't want me in their caucus, just tell me and I'll leave. If the Senate is 50-50 or close or tight, is John Fetterman going to leave his party and become an independent and maybe caucus with Republicans? It's so weird because Fetterman is like 95% liberal, but it's the 5% lack of orthodoxy that Democrats and leftists can't stand. They want to kick him out of the party. So watch John Fetterman, too, his rhetoric and what he might do post-November. All right, Scott Bertram in here on Daybreak. Welcome back. It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber on this Tuesday morning all across this great country of ours. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve, although Steve's going to join us now. Steve Gruber with us on the program, a guest at his own show. He was at the Donald Trump appearance and rally yesterday at General Motors, taking it all in, talking to the crowd, and finding out what he can find out. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Scott. Hope you're doing well. You know, I just heard you talking about Francesca Hong over in Wisconsin. And I've got to tell you, I think that was part of the theme that we heard from Donald Trump in Milford at the Proving Grounds for General Motors yesterday. It's communism versus common sense, or I think they called it common sense versus commie crazies. But it was repeated by Mike Rogers, who's clearly the clear front runner for Michigan U.S. Senate as a Republican against Abdul El-Sayed. I mean, these kinds of candidates are popping up all over. And you look at the numbers. There should be a year where Donald Trump, his approval ratings are in the low 40s. You know, he's not real popular on a couple of things. The Democrats should be in a cakewalk here, and they're not in a cakewalk. They're getting pounded. And something else that I thought was really interesting yesterday, Scott, we're at the GM Proving Grounds in building 98 or whatever they called it. It was packed to the absolute rafters. I mean, on the television cameras, we're about a third of the way back in the building from the stage, right? But behind us, all the way back, people that couldn't see the stage even were packed. It's Monday afternoon. These are working class people. These are blue collar people. It was pretty impressive for the president. And the energy, look, I've been to a lot of these things. The energy was off the hook.
I was going to ask about that because you have John James and Mike Rogers in Michigan who are running for governor and Senate respectively. Among Republicans, there is always this question, Steve, about does the enthusiasm for President Trump transfer when he's not actually on the ballot? Can you take the enthusiasm for Donald Trump and transfer it to a pair of Republicans looking to flip the governor's mansion and flip a U.S. Senate seat in the state of Michigan? What vibe did you get from the audience? Were they as enthusiastic about those candidates as they are for President Trump?
They really were, and that's what was remarkable to me was the enthusiasm. And look, make no mistake, Donald Trump is putting himself on the ballot. You look at where he's gone lately. He's gone to Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan. He's going to all the key swing states, the 7 key states that are called the swing states right now these days. They're subject to change over time, of course. But he's going to all the key places, and he's going to industrial places. He's going to working class places in Pittsburgh and in Georgia and in Michigan. He's talking, look, if you talk to a socialist, right, and they want the government to take over Medicare for all, for example, well, how many union workers that have fought for their health care benefits, their dental benefits, their optic benefits, all the benefits they've gotten through the union over the years that they've fought for and gone on strike for, and they want to give that up to some guy who says, well, the government's going to take care of it. That does not sell well. That does not fly in Milford, Michigan, or a lot of other places around this country. You know, they've worked hard to get these contracts and, you know, and stood in line and stood on picket lines. And somebody like Abdul El-Sayed is going to come along and say, well, we want the government to take care of that. And that's why this is the message. I think they've locked on this message, common sense or commie crazy. And look, they've got plenty to point to. You've got plenty going on in Michigan with Abdul El-Sayed. In my district, Will Lawrence, who's running to hope to get against Tom Barrett, card-carrying member of the DSA. I mean, the DSA that wants to eliminate the United States Senate, get rid of the presidency, get rid of the Supreme Court. You've seen their talking points on social media. They went right out there and they said it. Right?
Yeah, Megan Romer. We'll play that later on. We played it earlier. We'll play it again. You can't play that enough because it's 40 seconds of the DSA co-chair admitting all the ways they want to dismantle and destroy the country. Literally. Right. As you said, abolishing the Senate, no borders, no money for defense, no prisons, seize the means of production. This can be an effective line as we run toward November. I want to ask about perhaps another effective line, the Save America Act, which the president's been talking about now for months, which most in the party agree with, want to see passed. Did you hear people talking about the SAVE Act kind of amongst themselves in the crowd? Is that the kind of legislation that will motivate voters to head to the polls in November?
Well, it is, but if I'm reading this correctly, Scott, and I missed this until just recently, it's going to be on the ballot in Michigan. We know it's going to be on the ballot in California, but there's a ballot initiative that passed muster in Michigan. I think they're waiting for the language to come out that would require voter ID, that would require citizenship. And there's about 7 or 8 states that are going to have it on the ballot this fall. So, yeah, that's a little late. But as you look at the improvements that are happening, and I don't think that the truckloads of ballots are just going to show up at 3 in the morning like they did at the TCF Center in Detroit back in 2020. I don't think you're going to see the blatant manipulation. You can call it what you want. You can call us conspiracy theorists, whatever. There's just too much now. With all the things that have been declassified by John Solomon and the transparency team there inside the West Wing, so much has been released now. You can go look at all of it and find out, and take a look at all the things that are out there. So yes, it's something that motivates people. It will drive people, and I think it will drive enough people to the ballot box. I mean, too big to rig was a great catchphrase. It was also effective. The question is, can these these DSA candidates, look, they're not Democratic, they're socialists, they're communists.
Mm-hmm.
Can that move the people and motivate them? I believe it can. And the Save America Act, in some form or another, is going through, like I said, 6 or 8 or 10 states, however many have it on the ballot, California for sure. And so there's this movement toward, and I had people sending notes, paper ballots, mail-in ballots, or paper ballots. That's not what we're talking about, guys. We're talking about put a ballot in, count it out. The way they do in a lot of countries, like Kamala Harris was advocating for in 2019. I get emails. I laugh about that, Scott, because I've gotten 3 emails in the last day. Paper ballots or mail-in ballots? No, dude, not what I'm talking about.
Steve Gruber with us, Scott Bertram filling in for Steve and Ivor this morning on Daybreak. I want to ask about Trump himself, because I know you see it. I see Trump's lost a step. Trump is not as enthusiastic about things. Trump's not as engaged on this, that, or other thing as he's halfway through his second term. How does the Trump that you saw yesterday compare to the Trump that you saw at previous rallies?
He must have had an extra Big Mac and Diet Coke on the way in the door. I don't know how the guy does it. He must sleep like 4 hours a night. He comes bouncing in. He makes a joke about, if I did this or that, maybe I'd lose a little weight. He goes, oh, that's what he said. It's really hot up here. I should do this more. I'd lose a little bit of weight. Same sort of thing. Any guy that would say that needs to lose a few pounds, right? He does the dance on the way out the door. His energy level was peak. Yeah, he was in great shape yesterday. Absolutely great shape. Crowd loved him. Blue collar people. Expect to see a lot more of that in Michigan, in Ohio, in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, of course, whatever swing state there is, he'll be there because he is putting himself on the ballot. I think he looked great, to be honest. His hair's thinner.
Yeah. Well, it's me too. So I relate. Steve Gruber, and he'll be back tomorrow here on the program. Wednesday morning, yesterday at the Donald Trump event here in Michigan. Steve, thanks for still getting up early with us and providing some insight and firsthand analysis of yesterday's event.
Thank you, Scott.
Appreciate it. Sure. Steve Gruber with us here on his very own program. Scott Bertram back with J.D. Hayworth in just a moment. You're on Daybreak. It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve and Ivy this morning. You get one for the price of two, as I like to say. You can find me on X at Scott Bertram, SCOTBERTRAM, scottbertram.com. Joined now by J.D. Hayworth. He's a spokesperson for the Pharmaceutical Reform Alliance. You can find it I'm going to get this wrong, pharmaceuticalreformalliance.com. JD will tell me I'm wrong in a second. He's also a former congressman. He's also a former talk show host as well. JD Hayworth, thanks so much for joining us.
Scott, an honor to be with you, and just a little bit of, I'd call it housekeeping, but web keeping, okay? PharmaReformAlliance.com.
There you
the
go.
The organization is called Pharmaceutical Reform Alliance, but it's shortened for the website. And we encourage everyone to go check out the documentation and really get into an issue that is one of the issues that actually brings us all together. Imagine that.
PharmaReformAlliance.com. You'll want to get there because there's a new report, America Last, how Big Pharma puts profits over patients. That's literally out today. So give people a preview of what they're going to find at PharmaReformAlliance.com. What's the bottom line on the new report?
Well, Scott, not to be flippant about this, but Big Pharma continues to raise prices on Americans. The president's instincts have been good. And you'll recall, gosh, now, over a year ago, he announced classic Trump, flipping the script. In my days on the Ways and Means Committee, when we talked about most favored nations, we were talking about, foreign nations. Mr. Trump says, no, let's make the United States of America the most favored nation. And with good reason, when you take a look that so many of us are in a situation where we are deciding, at least 1 in 4 American adults skipping doses of medicine, maybe ignoring the pharmaceuticals, the prescriptions they need to pay the rent, to have food on the table. And this is not an issue specific to seniors. You may recall that during my days on the Ways and Means Committee, we actually passed a prescription drug benefit for American adults, for those over 65. But the fact is, this is hitting everybody. And Scott, we are seeing it in the numbers. We have polling, but the most compelling number, of course, is the price tag. And on average, Americans are paying 3 times what drug patients in other wealthy countries, in our European neighbors, if you will, Western Europe, our friends down under in Australia and Japan, we're paying on average 3 times as much because the pharmaceutical guys have gotten away with it. And this is not, when people say, oh, it's the free market, look, there are built-in market distortions. And the American people are getting a raw deal, which is why, Scott, we need to codify. We need to put into law what the president has done with his executive order of last year, because that goes away in 3 years if Congress does not put this into law.
What are the forces that are warping the markets? Why do Americans pay more than patients in other countries for their prescriptions, and why does it keep rising every year?
Perhaps, and this is partly conjecture, and again, not to be flippant about it, because you ask a legitimate question, Scott, but it has ever been thus in the post-war world. And I thought it was interesting when Dr. Oz was on Face the Nation a year ago, he likened it to what's been going on with NATO, where he said, wait a minute, European countries have money. They need to stand up and pay their fair share. What we've got right now is a raw deal for Americans, because Big Pharma will tell you in their ads, hey, we take these profits and we pump them into research. Well, not exactly. Money is fungible, and yes, they are spending some, but understand, Scott, we're getting the American people are paying out of their wallet twice. Their tax money goes to our public health institutes that develop many of the drugs that big pharma charges us more for. So it's disingenuous for big pharma to claim, hey, we're doing the research. The American people are paying for it, both in the price tag for big pharma products, but also in terms of their tax dollars going to research to finance a lot of R&D within our national framework, sponsored by the American people.
JD Hayworth with us from the Pharmaceutical Reform Alliance, pharmareformalliance.com. The new report, America Last, is out this morning. Find it there. I'm here in little Hillsdale, Michigan, JD, and I go to get my prescription of my cholesterol drugs. And there's a wall full of buckets, and every bucket is packed with prescriptions. And that's not the only pharmacy in town. And you extrapolate that out, and you realize how many people are on how many prescriptions all across the country. My point being, talk about pocketbook issues. This is one that affects not just the elderly, but people across the age spectrums that can have a real effect on pocketbooks every single month. What kind of savings are possible, perhaps?
As I've heard, and you know the thing about this, Scott, there are so many different things about this issue. For example, the intellectual property. Again, we as Americans foot the bills, and then the unique formularies for these prescription drugs can be changed slightly. There can be little things that keep those drugs from going on the generic market to lower prices. I read, according to one study, if we just use traditional patent law, just straight intellectual property law, we would knock prices down by one estimate I saw, I couldn't believe it, 80%. But then again, the other thing is Big Pharma's been able to do it. Despite the best efforts of the president, we've seen some high-profile price reductions, but at the start of this year, Big Pharma just said, we're going to raise prices on almost 1,000 prescription drugs.
JD Hayworth, we got to run. PharmaReformAlliance.com is where to find the information.
If you take supplements, have you ever thought about how
It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertram filling in on this Tuesday morning. A check of sports? Sure, why not? Brock is here with us for that.
With a look at sports, I'm Brock Palmbush. There were 11 games in Major League Baseball yesterday. American League winners included Baltimore, Toronto, and Texas. National League winners included the New York Mets, Pittsburgh, and San Francisco. Cleveland and Cincinnati were rained out. The Miami Marlins walked it off on Griffin Conine's RBI single in the bottom of the ninth to beat Philadelphia 8-7. It broke a 12-game losing streak for the Marlins. There were no games in the WNBA last night as the league returns from its All-Star break. There are 5 games going on tonight. And the Philadelphia 76ers officially announced the signing of future Hall of Famer LeBron James yesterday. James gets a 2-year deal worth $8 million, with the second year being a player option. LeBron is the NBA's all-time leading scorer and has won the league's most valuable player on 4 different occasions. That's a look at sports. Back to you, Scott.
Thanks, Brock. My White Sox, with a surprisingly good season, although last night, one of those frustrating games, they were up 3-0 on the Yankees and ended up blowing it, losing. They did the same thing against the Astros earlier. It's a good position to be in when you actually care about blown losses. The past 3 years, they've lost 100 games, so it was status quo. It was to be expected you'd blow a lead. But now, first place in the AL Central, you care about blowing leads against teams like the Astros and the Yankees. White Sox 2 up in the AL Central right now, so happy about that. You might be happy about longevity. Yeah, 90% of Americans don't get enough essential vitamins and minerals from food alone. Some research suggests that natural vitamins might be superior to synthetic ones. Longevity is an excellent source of more than 20 natural vitamins and minerals from real food sources, not synthetic. Longevity is a complete nutritional support that gives you everything you need to age well. Go to longevitywellness.co and enter the promo code Gruber at checkout for a special discount. That's longevitywellness.co, promo code Gruber at checkout for the special discount. Coming up, hour 3, continue with us, please. Katie Hyde with us from Michigan News Source, Jay Ford as well. Yeah, we'll hear the DSA co-chair tell us what socialism and the DSA is all about at least one more time during today's program. So stick with us. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve and Ivy. This is Tuesday Morning's Daybreak.
America's awake, and we're just getting started. The headlines that matter, the stories they won't tell you, and the voices fighting to be heard. This is your country, your morning, your daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. A new hour starts right now.
Live from the campus of Hillsdale College here in beautiful Hillsdale, Michigan. This is Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve and Ivy this morning on Daybreak, this Tuesday, July 28th of 2026. Thanks so much for joining us. And here are three big things you need to know. One, the Department of Justice turning to the Supreme Court to restore President Trump's executive order that seeks to restrict mail-in voting. The executive order directs the Department of Homeland Security to compile a list of verified U.S. citizens who are eligible to vote, while also instructing the USPS to create new rules to toughen requirements for states conducting voting by mail. Two, New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani says he plans to attend the city's September 11th remembrance ceremony despite opposition from some victims' families. Mamdani says he will honor the victims, survivors, and first responders impacted by the attacks. Several families launching a petition to bar him from the event. More on New York's mayor here in just a couple of minutes. And number three, the Coca-Cola Company says its milk brand Fairlife has resumed most production in the U.S. This comes after a ransomware attack halted operations. The beverage giant added that product quality and safety has not been impacted. That's where we start hour three of Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertram filling in here at Hillsdale College, where I serve as general manager of the award-winning student radio station, WRFH. Also a lecturer in journalism. Also director of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. You find me hosting fine shows like the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, a podcast, and also on 60-plus radio stations across the country. And political beats via National Review, others, all my media doings at scottbertram.com. And you can find me on X at Scott Bertram, SCOTBERTRAM. Socialism is all the rage on the left. The Democratic Socialists of America counting victories in various deep blue districts, thinking they could extend to other areas. A socialist right now leading in the polls in the Democratic nomination for governor in Wisconsin. You've got a socialist mayor of New York, a socialist mayor of Seattle. You've got socialists who won't admit to being socialists, like the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. Abdul El Sayed, who we'll hear later on in the hour, says, I'm not a socialist. I'm just someone who believes in capitalism, who knows how the system is run. If you have to say you're not a socialist, it's because you're doing too many socialist things and people actually think you're a socialist, and you probably are. The DSA co-chair, Megan Romer, I don't think we can play this enough. I'll try not to overplay it, but man, 40 seconds distilled that the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, want to destroy America's very foundations. And, Barack Obama had we're going to fundamentally change America. This is not fundamentally changing America. The DSA wants to fundamentally destroy America. There is no other conclusion you can reach when you hear things like this. Cut one. This is DSA co-chair Megan Romer, Fox News Sunday, confirming all the crazy, dangerous stuff the DSA actually wants to do. Cut one.
So we're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform, and I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate.
True.
Okay. Replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them.
Yep.
Abolish ICE.
Absolutely.
Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally.
As a long-term plan, yep.
Defund the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Abolish prisons, at least in large part.
Yeah, again, that as part of a long-term program, yeah.
Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Abolish the Senate, replace the president, Supreme Court, abolish ICE, no borders, amnesty for all, defund the Pentagon, abolish prisons, seize the means of production, a checklist of all the things the DSA wants to accomplish if they were to ever grab power here in the US. And make no mistake, they are trying. You have a socialist mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani, mentioned that some 9/11 survivor families are not so thrilled that he might attend the 9/11 remembrances for various reasons. He's out yesterday rolling out these government-owned grocery stores in New York City. They're not ready to go yet, but he's telling you how they're going to work, how government-owned grocery stores. Haven't we figured out grocery stores? We pretty much have this done. David Harsanyi makes this point in a few pieces he's written recently. We don't have to reform grocery stores. We have this figured out. But the government thinks, especially when you're a socialist, always thinks it can do better than the market. Zoran Mamdani yesterday talking about how these grocery stores are going to work. And essentially, hey, congrats, New York City. You're getting price controls, and nothing bad has ever happened through price controls in the economy. This is cut to New York City's Zoran Mamdani.
And that is frankly unacceptable, which is why city government is stepping in to make people's lives more affordable. Today, I am proud to announce a collection of essential staples that will be predictably 30% cheaper at all 5 of our city-run grocery stores. This core set of goods will include all fresh produce, meat, and seafood, along with 20 other essential items like cheese, milk, and bread. Here's how it will work. Once a month, our 5 city-run grocery stores will set prices for this core set of goods at 30% below typical retail prices. No exceptions, no gimmicks. The savings will last for the entire month. That means no weekly fluctuations nor sticker shock at the checkout line. Not for our seniors living on fixed incomes, nor for the parents who rely on a regular supply of apple slices to keep toddler tantrums at bay.
All right, a couple things here. Zoran Mamdani, mayor of New York, 30% below market rate, essentially. The profit margin at grocery stores is razor thin, generally 1%, 3%, somewhere in that range, which means if you're pricing things 30% below, what's happening is you're eliminating the profit, the 1 to 3%, and then the rest of the 27, 28% is just taxpayers subsidizing those goods for others. And I was trying to explain why this is that beginning of the slippery slope. And as I found this post by Sean McGuire over on X, which pretty much did the job for me. So if I can quote him a little bit, this is how you begin to destroy an economy in New York City. You're going to tax people to subsidize these community-run grocery stores and the prices that you're offering 30% below other places. Then things happen. People being overly taxed start leaving. It's already happening, of course, to Florida and elsewhere. And then, of course, shoppers leave the traditional grocery stores for the subsidized community stores. Traditional grocery stores go bankrupt, of course. Supply chain breaks down. Even these government-run stores then have problems stocking the inventory. Then people kind of panic. They can't find the goods and services the traditional grocery stores have shut down. More people flee. Government implements things like exit fees. You want to live in New York, you got to pay a tax. Then people start hoarding materials, start plotting to leave. And this is where things get dangerous. This is how the slippery slope begins toward the destruction of economies. And this is what we're trending towards in New York City. Scott Bertram in for Steve here on Daybreak. It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertram filling in. Song to get you going. Motivated on this Tuesday morning. Eye of the Tiger from Survivor. Number one on this day back in 1982. That'd be 44 years ago today. Fun fact, the lead singer of Survivor at this time, a guy named Dave Bickler, went to my high school. We didn't go at the same time. But he's also a graduate of the same high school I attended. He was singer for Eye of the Tiger, then left the band, replaced by Jimmy Jamison for the other Survivor songs likely sung by Jimmy Jamison. And then Dave Bickler became famous again for being the singer of the old Bud Light Real Men of Genius ads, if you remember those, very popular some time ago. That was Dave Bickler, same guy who sang Eye of the Tiger, sang the Real Men of Genius ads for Bud Light. That's your fun fact for the day. Scott Bertram filling in for Steve and Ivy here on Daybreak. Katie Hyde with us from Michigan News Source, where she's news director. We take a look at stories impacting us around the great state of Michigan. Katie, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. And you're just full of trivia tidbits this morning. I love it.
It's overflowing. That's why I have to get them out in some manner each and every day. Katie, a horrible news story, rough transition to this Grand Haven murder suicide. One of the first, actually the first major news story I ever covered. I was a college student and it happened across the street from my college campus, which is why I was so close, was a story of a mother killing her 3 children. And these are incredibly difficult stories to cover as a reporter. For anyone, certainly. And the more details that come out, this is a father, a family of 6 children. Tell us more about what we know about what happened in Grand Haven.
Yes, absolutely horrific. You're right. And as a reporter, certainly difficult to cover. But I think of the first responders, the sheriff's deputies, the investigators that had to go inside this house and investigate what happened and to see what they saw, certainly remembering them during this time along with the extended family. So what we know, and there's been a lot of speculation, but this is from the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department. They say that a Grand Haven Township father killed his wife, his 6 children, set multiple fires inside the family's home, and then killed himself. Officials say that 47-year-old Christopher Korokovich used a handgun to kill 39-year-old Mandy, his wife, their 6 kids, then took his own life. Investigators believe that the shootings may have happened on Thursday night before calls came into the police on Friday. So what happened is neighbors had called and said that they smelled smoke in the area. Fire investigators came out. They couldn't find where this said fire was taking place, but then a few hours they came out and discovered the fire at that location. They went inside and then discovered the tragic scene there. The children are ranging in age from 5 to 15. Police will not release their names. They were found in different bedrooms. Authorities said they were reviewing documents left at the scene. The fire in the basement really did a number down there, so they tried to get as much information out of there as they could. But several family pets also died. And the investigation, of course, remains all ongoing. We're going to continue to follow it. But as you had alluded to in the beginning, when you cover these news stories, we forget sometimes that these are real people with real family and community members that they've left behind that are just reeling. And so we certainly have thoughts and prayers with this entire community and the first responders.
And Katie, I assume likely nothing yet in terms of motive or explanation. Most of these stories go beyond explanation. We can't understand why someone would do something like this, but no indication about why this might have occurred as of yet.
Not at this point. Sheriff's deputies yesterday would not confirm the employment of either Mandy or her husband, Chris. I think they're keeping that tight-lipped. So there might be some motive involving one of their jobs, but they were not going to speculate on any of that. And so, as you said, even if a motive comes out and we understand why this happened, we don't really understand why this happened, but we'll certainly be following that.
Katie Hyde with us, MichiganNewsSource.com, the news director there. Katie, a debate last night, the final debate among the 2 Democrats remaining in the race for the nomination for U.S. Senate. Haley Stevens Abdul El Sayed. Um, I was just talking to a friend about this over the weekend. I don't. I think the polling's been terrible. Like El Sayed's up 14. No, Stevens upset. Like there's been no constant sort of movement in the polling. So I look at signals, and I see the signals being that El Sayed is rallying with out-of-state socialists virtually every day. Haley Stevens is getting endorsements from the governor. Haley Stevens seems to be getting there are Democrats in the state now saying that if El Sayed wins, they might not support him in November. The signals seem to be that Haley Stevens is picking up momentum as we head toward election day. What are you seeing perhaps on the ground, and what are you seeing in reports?
Well, I like your assessment. How many times have we seen polling leading into an election and then it goes the other way and everyone's going, "Oh my goodness, what happened there?" Your signaling comment is certainly right. Now, the one thing that stood out in the debate, and again, we're a week out from the election. Early voting is already underway. Apparently, there's still some undecideds, but El Sayed classified himself as a capitalist, which I found very
Yeah.
interesting. The other signal, as you mentioned, is that Governor Gretchen Whitmer has endorsed Haley Stevens, and leadership within the Michigan GOP said that that seems to indicate that the Democratic Party here in Michigan is panicked.
Yeah, Governor Whitmer, as her second term comes to an end, isn't doing a lot of anything, traveling out of state. But it's not as if she's a political force at this point in her second term. It seems to me that unless she was finding uh, polling, unless she saw internal indications that Stevens was either closing fast or already had a lead in this race, that there was no reason for her to take this sort of leap to endorse Haley Stevens. That again, to me, says that there's likely some behind the scenes momentum towards Stevens in the race.
Right. And we also have another signal, as you mentioned. We have sitting U.S. Senator Gary Stevens, who's retiring and whose seat is going to be open, that he has thrown his support behind her as well.
Mhm.
So, again, Michigan GOP says they're panicking. Democratic Party seems confident.
All right, Katie Hyde, we're actually going to hear some from Abdul El Sayed later on in this hour. MichiganNewsSource.com for more coverage. Katie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday morning. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve and Ivy. They're back tomorrow, but if you want a little preview, next week, mark your calendars. I'm with you all week. So I hope you enjoy the show and hope you'll be with me next week. Yesterday, some incredibly strong storms across Wisconsin, Illinois, Northwest Indiana, a powerful tornado just outside Appleton. At least as of late last night, no fatalities from that storm, some injuries. And the video coming out of the Appleton area, that's a highly destructive tornado. Wouldn't be surprised if that's an EF3 with very high winds and destructive capabilities in Appleton. Those storms, weird day, the storms moved almost due south, which you don't see very often, through the Chicago area, had some flooding on roadways. I mentioned this to you earlier in the show if you were with us, and if you were, thank you so much. The rest of my family headed back toward Illinois yesterday to visit some family members. I stayed here to guest host for Steve and also take care of business here at work. They were headed toward the Chicago area just as these incredibly severe thunderstorms were moving through. And my wife was driving, so I'm on the phone talking to her. I'm looking at radar. I'm checking out severe weather reports. You've got severe thunderstorm warnings yesterday out for South suburban Chicago, Northwest Indiana that said it's an extremely dangerous situation. An EDS report: 100-mile-per-hour straight line winds, hail 2 inches in diameter. So we had her stop, pull off the road, Northwest Indiana, before she got to these storms in the Chicago area. Everything worked out okay. They made it safely, some heavier traffic. But I thought back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, certainly 30 years ago, you don't have this capability of pulling up your phone and looking at a radar. They would just be driving toward Illinois and would have been stuck in the middle of 100-mile-an-hour straight-line winds, because how would you know? Except maybe National Weather Service, severe weather statements. My goodness. Technology helping us stay safe. It's good use for it. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve here on Daybreak. It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertram sitting in this morning on this day back in 2021. Dusty Hill, the longtime bassist for ZZ Top, passed away at the age of 72 years old. Billy Gibbons did most of the singing in ZZ Top, but every now and then Dusty Hill would sing one. This one of ZZ Top's signature songs, Tush. And Dusty Hill has vocals on this one. Dusty died on this day in 2021. ZZ Top rolls on. The bass tech has filled in ably for Dusty Hill in recent years. He passed away this day in 2021. Scott Bertram in for Steve and Ivy here on Daybreak. We're joined by Jay Ford. Jay Ford, internationally acclaimed American author, founder of Lit Nation, leading America's youth back to literature. His brand new release is Rustling of the Sycamores. Fifth book, first written for young adults. Find more at jford.com, F-O-A-R-D.com. Jay, thanks so much for joining us.
You're very welcome, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we keep seeing these headlines. I saw another again this week. Our youth, our young adults are no longer able to read. And I mean read in a way that they are understanding, that they comprehend the stories, that they know what's going on. Have you found this to be a problem? Have you found that to be an accurate assessment that for whatever reason, we have a generation of young people growing up who don't know specifically how to read a work of fiction or how to understand a work of fiction?
I mean, absolutely. It's become an epidemic for our young people in this country. And you made the point earlier about technology and how it can be used for good. But what we're finding is that it can also have very negative effects. And that's kind of what we're seeing in our young people.
Is it also an attention span crisis too? We again, these devices and phones and screens that begin to cut down on the ability for children to focus on one specific thing. Is it also a problem of attention span and focus that leads our youth to be unable to finish a book? Maybe they can read an article, but a book, a 200, 300-page book, is that becoming a problem for many?
Well, absolutely. And again, this comes back to the fact that so many young people are addicted to social media. 95% of American youth are on social media. An interesting statistic, 65% said that they had received negative content, and almost half had felt depression from things that they've experienced online. So this technology is really working against us. The problem that we have is that almost all of it is algorithm driven. It's very sophisticated algorithms that looks for sensationalized content to share with the young people. So it's trying to get an emotional response. The higher the emotional response, the more clicks and views. So you've got young people that are being marginalized because they're seeing things that are intentionally made to be sensationalized. And the negative effects are you can see it in our schools. The attention deficit, to your point, I mean, they're looking for 10 seconds of entertainment. And so the way that it impacts the brain is much different than when they pick up a book. And that's part of why we're running this Lit Nation initiative, because we got to get kids back to reading.
Jay Ford is with us here on Daybreak. Scott Bertram in for Steve and Ivy. Lit Nation, leading America's youth back to literature. All right, how do you combat the problem here and show our youth the magic and the fun of reading?
Yeah, great question. And so what we're finding is working. First of all, we're really leaning on parents, grandparents, guardians to help to create a better balance in the household, because as we know, the social media and the way these algorithms work is like a drug. It impacts the brain. It's like dopamine into the brain, and so it is addictive. And so what we have to we're looking for parents to start to think about how can we create a better balance, and you can do that by time blocking, making a teenager, making a young adult in the house put down their device and actually have to pick up a book. Maybe if it's a half hour, if it's 45 minutes, if anything that you can squeeze out of them to start to change some of those bad habits into good habits of actually doing some reading. And this is critical because reading develops the brain differently. It's character development, it's storytelling, it's historical context. It's attention. To your point about attention, you have to actually sit down and focus on something for longer than 10 seconds for a short clip. And so it's very good for their mental development. And it's also good because it gives them much more choice. The problem with these algorithms is that once you watch something, if you watch kids fighting in the schoolyard, then from then on, the algorithms start to prioritize that particular content. So that becomes all they get. So what's happened is children, young adults, young readers have become less eclectic because they're being funneled to certain types of content because of these algorithms. So at least with books, you can have a variety. You can try different subjects, different ways of learning. And so it becomes really, really critical that the parents kind of help develop this good habit in the house. We're not relying on the school system. We've seen what's happened with the public schools, and that's why we're really leaning on the families and the parents to start to think about this and start to put those good habits in place.
Yeah. So Jay, have we outsourced too much of this responsibility to schools, teachers in schools, as trying as hard as they might? Do parents need to reassert themselves and become more involved in what their children are reading and perhaps assisting them in, again, both reading and comprehension?
Absolutely. And again, we can see the negative benefits, but we can't depend on schools, and I think that parents are realizing that across the board. You just can't depend on the system to do this. This is stuff that really needs to start in the home. If they're getting that type of discipline in the school, that's even better. But if the kids are not reading at home, then what makes the parent think that they're going to read at the school? Right, so you can't really lean on the teachers to be responsible for that. Just like anything else, it's good habits that we try to create in the household. This is another one of those good habits that parents really need to reconsider how much time their kids are spending. Hours. The average is 4 to 5 hours, and some are much longer hours that they're spending online scrolling through content.
Jay Ford is with us. His new book is Rustling of the Sycamore. You can find it at jford.com, F-O-A-R-D. Books like Rustling of the Sycamore and other great works of fiction, how do they help form a child's moral imagination? How do they give children a palette to begin picturing things the way they could be?
A great question. So our program, Lit Nation, is a 3-part program. The first, again, is this time blocking. Start to try to force, or I hate to say force because it's not a punishment, but at least have young people pick up a book for an amount of time. The second part of it is a degree of separation, meaning that if they put the device down beside them, every few seconds it's going to be binging going off because someone's posting someone. So you almost have to your point about attention span, you have to have a degree of separation, so they actually have to focus. And then the third part is good content. You want based books that parents want their children reading, and that was the whole point of Rustling of the Sycamore. It's a great action adventure story. It's super fun for young people to read. They love the storyline. There's a lot of historical context in it. There's a lot of critical thinking. There's a lot of really cool, interesting characters that are developed throughout the story. So it's the kind of books that parents want their teenagers reading, from my opinion. So giving them good
Jay
content.
Ford,
Also,
FOARD.com. You can find Rustling the Sycamore and more.
Tired of hard water ruining your appliances, your clothes, staining your sinks, and
It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertram filling in on this Tuesday morning, wishing a happy birthday number 78 to Gerald Casale from the band Devo. He turned 78 years old today. Girl You Want is the song here. You might know them better for Whip It. But Gerald Casale still playing with the band. 78 years old today. Last I checked, they were on tour with the B-52s. Scott Bertram filling in for Steve and Ivy this morning on the program. Thanks so much for being alongside. Last night, the final debate, the U.S. Senate side for the Democratic nomination here in Michigan. Abdul El-Sayed and Haley Stevens. I saw clips and highlights. I'm not going to tell you I saw the thing from start to finish. Abdul El-Sayed has been getting more scrutiny, even from some mainstream media sources, which is interesting. CNN asking questions of Abdul El-Sayed, and his fallback position is not to answer them. Either blame AIPAC, the PAC, or say, I'm not going to answer that question because you'll just use the answer against me, which, of course, is probably true. Last night, Abdul El-Sayed was asked about ICE and abolishing ICE, and of course, he says, yes, we should abolish ICE. Now, Haley Stevens said the same thing. And by the way, I've come back to this a couple of times. Let's be clear. Haley Stevens is going to be described as a moderate or a centrist by many in the mainstream media. She is now leaning into her accent, her Michigan accent. She's a woman of the people. She's representing Michigan. She is straight down the line, mainstream, middle of the Democratic Party. There's very little separating Haley Stevens from Abdul El-Sayed, except the most extreme parts, perhaps. But they both agree that we should abolish ICE. They're on the same page. Abdul El-Sayed last night says, yeah, no more ICE if I'm elected. This is cut number 8 from last night's debate.
I said that we need to abolish ICE. ICE is not about immigration. ICE is not about the southern border. We can have a safe and secure southern border. We can also enforce immigration policy. But ICE is not about that. ICE is about normalizing paramilitary force on our streets.
Normalizing paramilitary force on the streets. That's what he believes ICE is all about. And that's why Abdul El-Sayed would eliminate ICE. Now, if you recall, the DSA co-chair, Megan Romer, was so nice to confirm all the crazy and dangerous things that DSA candidates want to achieve. Abolish the Senate, replace the president and Supreme Court as we know it, abolish ICE, abolish borders, amnesty for all, defund the Pentagon, abolish prisons, seize the means of production. Well, Abdul El-Sayed agrees with at least one of those things, and that is abolishing ICE. There should be a question about how many he agrees with. He has been endorsed by DSA candidates. He campaigns with DSA candidates. How much of that platform does he agree with? Now, he will tell you he's not a socialist. He said so specifically last night. This is cut number 7 from last night's debate.
When it comes to the question of socialism, I'm not a socialist. I'm just a capitalist who understands how capitalism works.
Capitalist who understands how capitalism works. Again, the follow-up I would have loved to have heard is, what makes you a capitalist? What do you believe in that makes you a capitalist and not a socialist? You're being endorsed by DSA candidates. Again, he has been explicit saying he's not a democratic socialist. He is a Democrat, and yet all or most of his support from national candidates comes from national Democrats comes from those members of the DSA. So ask him, what does he believe from the agenda the DSA chair laid out? Does he think we should abolish ICE? He does. He confirmed it last night. Abolish prisons. He already has lied about, he said he didn't say we should defund police. He did say we should defund police. And now perhaps has gone back. When he was asked that question directly, do you no longer believe it? He wouldn't say yes or no. Abolish prisons, defund the Pentagon. What of these things does Abdul El-Sayed support? If he claims he is not a socialist, then what separates him from someone like Haley Stevens, right? He is, Medicaid for all. He's that kind of candidate. This is going to go down to the wire. I was talking to a friend over the weekend, as I mentioned earlier, What do we think is going to happen? I am not confident in any of the polling that we've seen on the Democratic side. A lot of internal polling that has been leaked or released. There hasn't been a lot that I've seen credible polling on the race. And so, what will happen? I look at the signals. Again, would Gretchen Whitmer endorse Haley Stevens if she didn't think that she was trending toward a victory? The argument be maybe if she thought that Abdul Al Sayed was dangerous and would lead the party in a bad direction and perhaps cost Democrats the governor's mansion and the U.S. Senate seat, perhaps. I think it's more likely that since Mallory McMorrow has dropped out, we've seen more of Abdul Al Sayed, and people say, look, you can run these DSA candidates, DSA friendly candidates, in deep blue congressional districts where there's no Republican opponent of note and win. But can you do that in a purple state for U.S. Senate? And many Democrats perhaps looking and saying, I don't think we can do that. And that's maybe why Haley Stevens has momentum in the race. I would not be surprised if Abdul Al Sayed wins. I would not be surprised if Haley Stevens wins. I know it's going out on a limb. One of the two candidates will win, I safely predict. I'll be here with you next Tuesday on primary election day. I'll be here with you on Wednesday, the day after. So we will look deeply into the results and be able to preview the general election. Will it be Rogers versus Stevens, or will it be Rogers versus El Sayed? We will find out in just about 1 week. This portion of the program brought to you by Wolverine Water. Tired of hard water ruining your appliances, staining your sinks, and drying out your skin? At Wolverine Water Systems, they've been delivering pure, clean, great-tasting water for Michigan families for more than 70 years. Whether it's well water or city water, their American-made water softeners and filtration systems are custom-built to your water problems. Visit WolverineWaterSystems.com today for a free in-home water test. That's WolverineWaterSystems.com. Pure, clean water via WolverineWaterSystems.com. Scott Bertram filling in for Steve and Ivy, wrapping up the Tuesday edition of Daybreak in just a few moments.
What if every pedestrian you saw while
It's Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Scott Bertram filling in. Find me on X at Scott Bertram, SCOTBERTRAM, or scottbertram.com, where I corral all my media doings. Thanks to our guests today, Brylan Hollyhan, way back in hour number 1. Alan Wilson, the current Attorney General for South Carolina, also running for governor. He's the Republican nominee in South Carolina. Steve Gruber, that guy, was here in hour 2. J.D. Hayworth as well. And then Katie Hyde and Jay Ford here in hour number 3 of the program. If you missed anything or want to hear it again or share with friends, check out the podcast. You can find them where you find your podcast audio, and then the video clips as well. You can find those on Rumble and elsewhere. Behind the scenes, doing a great job cutting those up, getting them ready to go. Find them later on this morning. I almost forgot that I remembered the other controversy involving Abdul El-Sayed yesterday. Politico story, El-Sayed comes under fire for ogre on a pike leaked comment. He was on a Zoom meeting that Politico obtained and said, you put one ogre on a pike, then everyone else gets the message, and all of a sudden starts to sound a lot different. He was talking about the stakes in his race. He's already talking as if he has won the primary and won the general. Caitlin Buss will have a piece, if it's not up yet, at the Detroit News this morning, sort of talking. Abdul El-Sayed is already trying to spend capital he has not earned. He's not the nominee. He's not the U.S. senator. And yet he's saying, we're going to primary these people who don't agree with me. And you put an ogre on a pike and people start changing their tune. And so the immediate assumption was he was talking about Haley Stevens, beating Haley Stevens in the primary. Haley Stevens, ogre on a pike. Others see it and will change their tune. And yesterday, El-Sayed had to say, no. I, of course, wasn't talking about my esteemed my esteemed opponent, Haley Stevens. I was talking about John Fetterman. He said, I meant John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania. It's okay to talk about putting his head on a pike. I didn't mean my opponent's head on a pike. I meant John Fetterman's head on a pike. He's the ogre I was referring to. 1 week until Election Day here in Michigan, and early voting is underway. I'll be back with you next week. Please come back tomorrow as Steve and Ivy return as well. Thanks for joining us today here on Daybreak.